It's Monday, June 29. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. The number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Jamaica now stands at 696, with 6 new cases of COVID-19 reported. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says the number of recovered patients remained unchanged in the last 48 hours, standing at 552. Ever recovered and released from isolation. The new cases consist of 3 females and 3 males with ages ranging from 22 to 71 years, 5 of which are imported, having arrived on flights from the United States, while 1 is a contact of an imported case. 4 cases are Jamaicans with addresses of residence in Manchester, Westmoreland and St. James. The 2 other cases are non-Jamaicans staying in Westmoreland and Hanover. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Mackenzie says the major goal of the Ministry of Health and Wellness is to keep the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases below their capacity to respond to. As of June 15, the government started to relax restrictions at Jamaica's borders to allow persons to come home. Dr. Mackenzie notes the risk of increased cases of the virus, but says measures such as increased trained personnel and distribution of protective gear, as well as continued testing, are being done to protect all in the society.
We are in a much better position now than when we started out in January. We have put in a lot of resources, a lot of capacity has been built in terms of training of persons. Persons weren't so willing to take samples. We now have a lot of persons that are trained to take samples. A lot of persons weren't fitted to wear N95 masks in our health sector. A lot of persons have been fitted. We didn't have enough personal protective equipment. We've put in place a lot of inventory management in our facilities and have channeled our ordering of supplies so that we have a more reliable supplies of personal protective equipment. We have put in more facilities for the isolation of persons in our health facilities. We have put in more facilities to be able to manage persons needing high dependency and intensive care. We have put in more facilities in terms of contact tracing. We have done more in terms of being able to monitor persons. We have provided cell phones, tablets through our partners, computers, so that we can digitalize a lot of the process to make it easier to collect information. We have really put in a lot of resources, a lot of capacity has been built that would enable us to manage, because we do recognize that some of the restrictions do have to be lifted. And as they're lifted, the potential for rise is there. But we have kind of raised the level in terms of what our health system is able to manage.
Education Minister Samuda says that all things considered, the results of the 2020 Primary Exit Profile or PEP exams were satisfactory. The results for over 39,000 students were released last Friday. Minister Samuda provided an update at a virtual press conference.
The basis of the assessment comprised of the following tests. Grade 4 numeracy and literacy tests were done in 2018. We used that as the start of the process. That's where we began with the grade 4 numeracy and literacy tests that were done in 2018. We then also took into consideration in compiling these results the grade 5 performance test done in 2019 and the grade 6 ability tests that were done in February 2020. 100% of the students were placed in high schools. 16% of students were placed in secondary level schools that are in close proximity to the schools that they currently attend. 80%, or 31,017 of the students were placed in one of their preferred schools. That's a very important consideration because that is the basis of a lot of the frustrations that attend this process each year.
Mr. Samuda addressed the impact of COVID-19 on the exams as schools were closed in March in response to the pandemic.
Computation of the placement scores this year, as I have mentioned so many times, we don't have a playbook that tells us what to do while preparing for the students to take their examinations to move on into high school from primary schools when there is being experienced a pandemic, such as what is the case today. So we had to exercise the greatest amount of care and consideration and draw on the expertise both locally and internationally as to the process that should be followed in order to get the most accurate assessment for the children so that it would facilitate their moving on from primary school to secondary school.
The Senate on Friday approved the extension of the states of public emergency in Kingston Western and Kingston Central Police Divisions until July 25. Leader of Government Business in the Upper House, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, piloted the extension.
This space will provide an effective security corridor to enable the security forces to strategically maintain control of these areas through a more coordinated and targeted suite of operational responses. If an extension is not agreed today, Mr. President, this strategic control will come to an end on Monday, the 29th of June. Mr. President, the high level of violent crime in the Kingston Western and Central Police Divisions is of a scale and nature that not only threatens but greatly endangers public safety. And this is largely seen, Mr. President, in ruthless acts perpetrated by gangs and other criminal elements who have no regard for life or livelihood.
The resolution was passed after some debates.
Mr. President, the public defender has pointed out that these SOEs represent efforts at net fishing. You go into a community, you grab up as many of the poor black boys as you can. And you keep them, you process them, fingerprint pictures, you let them out. What you do with those photographs and fingerprints? They're not criminals, but they've been treated like criminals. If you're going with your state of emergency, why aren't you spear fishing? Why isn't it intelligence-led? And you go for who committing the crime, the violence producers. And the sad thing, they go for PNP and JLP and no P. It's just not right. Not right.
When you are detained on a reasonable suspicion, what would normally happen is that you are catered for by the state and you have specific visiting times for persons. Depending on where you fall in the alphabet, your relatives can visit you on a particular day, one day of the week. On the SOE, it could have been at the outset every day of the week. And there was a complaint that came to the Jamaica Constabulary. And I was surprised where the complaint came from because it was done after a visit by the public defender, where the public defender made an issue of that and asked for it to be removed for relatives who would have been able to bring food, and it was then that the state undertook to provide meals for the persons who were detained on the SOE. I found it a bit surprising. And I don't know about any photographs being taken because of how the system operates. So you need to go and visit a detention center, Mr. Senator Brown, and see how it operates.
The SOEs, which were declared by Prime Minister Andrew Holness on June 14, were slated to end on June 29. They were instituted for an initial 14 days in response to increased criminal activities in both divisions. The resolution was approved in the lower house last Tuesday. The contribution of micro, small and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, to our national development cannot be overemphasized. The sector was recognized on the weekend for its contribution to the social and financial sector around the world. Here in Jamaica, our MSMEs contribute $80.4 billion in revenue in 2018 and account for 35% of the nation's jobs. Additionally, there are approximately 220,000 registered small farmers operating on the island. State Minister in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, Floyd Green, in his statement on World MSME Day, said the sector will continue to receive support from the government.
That is to ensure that we provide venture capital for startups, that we provide small grants and loans, technical support, and also to help small businesses digitize their offerings to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. But there's more. We recognized during this time that we had to provide guidance and leadership, and our JBDC has been having weekly seminars online to ensure that you can retool, reassess, and you can move forward. Additionally, you can turn to the Exim Bank, who will be coming out with new loan facilities just to help our MSMEs. We know that this has been a stressful time, and that is why the Ministry of Health has provided a helpline that you can turn to. 888 New Life. Because as important as it is to secure your financial well-being, you must secure your mental well-being.
Justice Minister Delroy Chuck has issued an apology for comments made during a parliamentary discussion on the issue of appropriate time period for the reporting of sexual harassment. This is what he had to say during last Wednesday's sitting of the Joint Select Committee examining the proposed sexual harassment bill.
We don't want the situation that now happens in the Me Too movement in the U.S. Where 30 years later, you talk about I was harassed in the elevator.
Yes.
No, if you don't complain within 12 months, please, cut it off.
His comments have angered members of the public, including local women rights activists. In a statement to the media, Mr. Chuck says he apologizes to anyone who found his remarks inappropriate. The Justice Minister says it was never intended to disrespect the #MeToo movement or to diminish the seriousness of the emotional trauma caused by sexual harassment. The court's ability to facilitate video testimonies has been bolstered with the receipt of $85 million worth of audiovisual equipment from the European Union. Video testimony is permissible under the Evidence Special Measures Act. The equipment will be supplied to 19 courts to equip 78 courtrooms, some of which have already been outfitted with the devices that include screens, microphones, cameras, and supporting software. In a release, the ministry said the audiovisual equipment forms part of the greater thrust to modernize the court system in order to meet the needs of Jamaicans in the 21st century. A memorial service for Robert Bobby Digital Dixon, who died Thursday, May 21 from a kidney-related disease, was held on the weekend. He was 59 years old. Family, friends, musicians and entertainers locally and internationally paid emotional tributes during the memorial service. More from Marlon Samuels.
The death of Robert Dixon, more readily known as Bobby Digital, has created a sense of loss and the feeling that an era has passed. In the 1980s, Bobby Digital helped transform the use of rhythm tracks, built primarily on live studio performances in dancehall, to a computerized sound.
His association with legendary King Jammies will go down as one of the most important relationships in the history of modern popular music. It is through this collaboration, brothers and sisters, that many will trace the advent of a distinctive phase of digital production in the annals of Jamaican music. The infectious slang-tang rhythm, or I should say rhythm, with its countless versions, is testament to the transformative power of the musical synergy between jammies and Bobby Digital. Many who worked with Bobby were truly amazed at the sonic quality with which he was able to generate from his relatively small studio. But Bobby was not only digital, he was magical. He was able to coax emotions and sounds from artists that others might have found impossible to locate. Bobby Digital was the real deal.
He was the producer for many works by a number of artists, including Shabba Ranks, Garnet Silk, Richie Spice, Morgan Heritage, Sizzla, Tony Rebel, Beanieman, and Buju Banton. His son-in-law paid tribute in song.
In the midst of your struggles, you were always right there. In the midst of your struggles, I could feel you near. And even though you're gone, I can hear your voice say, carry on. I know you're listening to the melody, saying, this is my song. Shine on, shine on. You're shining down on me. Shine on, shine on. I know you're marching to that beat, yeah.
Renowned Jamaican performers were among those who acknowledged his musical influence. They demonstrated their admiration, respect, and love through musical tributes.
Yet though I walk in death's dark vale, yet will I fear no ill. Thy rod and staff, they are with me, they surely comforts me. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I remember when the chips are down and nobody was around and you were there. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Wherever you are in heaven, tell God I said you could be an angel. Wherever you are in heaven, tell God I said you deserve a pair of wings.
Robert Bobby Digital Dixon's musical genius and digital soundtracks have made an indelible mark on music in Jamaica and the world. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Marlon Samuels.
We now go to Gabriel Thompson to get the business report.
In Friday's trading session, the JSE combined index advanced by 511 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 73 stocks, of which 29 advanced, 31 declined, and 13 traded firm. The junior market index declined by 30 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 1834 Investments Limited, Burrito Investments Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica, Cargo Handlers Limited, and Caribbean Cement Company. Trading firm were Siboney Group Limited, Derrimont Trading Preference Shares, and Everything Fresh Limited. Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited was the volume leader with over 16 million units, followed by Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 4.3 million units and Pulse Investments Limited with 3.5 million units. Now for the foreign exchange, the US dollar on Friday, June 26 ended trading at $139.99. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $106. The pound sterling traded for $177.52, and the euro ended trading at $159.18. Oil prices slid on Monday as sharp spikes in new coronavirus infections around the world forced some countries to resume partial lockdowns, raising concerns about the pace of economic recovery and fuel demand. Brent crude futures dropped 44 cents to $40.58 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell 36 cents to settle at $38.13 a barrel. And that's it for the business report on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
In regional news, Barbados is COVID-19 free. Of the 97 reported cases, 90 persons have recovered, while 7 have lost their lives, now leaving no active cases. In response, Prime Minister Mia Mottley announced that curfews will be lifted on July 1. We get the details in this report.
Barbados is COVID-19 free at this stage, and upbeat Health Minister Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic today declared that it's been a month since the island recorded a case and all patients have recovered. He was speaking at a news conference at Ilara Court this morning.
We are now on day 35 without any local transmission of COVID-19. And even better news, all persons who were in isolation have been discharged, so there are no confirmed cases that we are still treating at the isolation facility at Harrison Point. Also important is the fact that all persons who were repatriated on the flights from the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada have been discharged from quarantine. And this is indeed good news. But this good news did not happen just like that. In spite of the support, the financial and other support and the leadership of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, in spite of the efforts of the Permanent Secretary, the Chief Medical Officer, and the hard-working staff at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, in spite of the all-of-government approach, we could not have reached this point unless we had the cooperation and the support of the ordinary Barbadian man and woman.
The welcome news paved the way for Prime Minister Mia Mottley to praise Barbadians for complying with the protocols, and she announced they would be rewarded with the removal of all curfews from July 1. She's confident the island is ready.
And in light of the level of maturity and responsibility that I have seen you exhibit over the last 3 months, we think as a government that it is safe for us to get on with our lives as we did before COVID-19 reached our shores. Cautiously, but get on. It is time to reward good behavior, but very carefully so, as we fully understand the consequences of being reckless and irresponsible, and you see them on television elsewhere. Very soon, the protocols governing our ability to socialize, I will announce, and we will implement. Rest assured that we will be monitoring them, as I said, and I have no fear of repeating myself, to make sure that people understand that you must comply with them all of the time.
In St. Lucia, Minister for Economic Development and Castri's Southeast Member of Parliament, Guy Joseph, has raised the issue of race in the recent criticism of Prime Minister Allen Chastanet's tenure in office by the opposition and detractors. Colby DeVoe of HTS News Force reports.
Minister for Economic Development, Castri's Southeast MP Guy Joseph, has accused the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party of being less than reverent with the institution of family as far as politics is concerned. During his contribution on the debate of the appropriation bill, Joseph claims that his family has been targeted by members opposite.
You see this FFF that these members speak about there? That is what they want to do. Enslave people in this country. They want you to come and beg them. They have tried to destroy family. And family is sacred, not to the opposition. And Mr. Speaker, I am a victim of this. They will go after any family member of yours. They will pay, they will offer them things, they will do all kinds of things to try and undermine you. Yes. Mr. Speaker, my wife, she had to leave because she's been a victim. No other person's family has been scrutinized more than my family.
The veteran MP took offence to what he perceives as recent attacks on the sincerity of Prime Minister Alan Chastanet. Joseph, who expressed support for the policies outlined in the budget address, took direct aim at former Prime Minister Viewfort South MP Dr. Kenny Anthony for reproach. The Castries South East MP sought to draw parallels between the leadership of Prime Minister Alan Chastanet and a great biblical figure.
The last election, here's what they said in the last election. This is not an election against the UWP. This is an election against the Chastanet family. That is what was said by the members opposite. I did not hear one of them say, look here, politics is politics. Leave the man's family out of it. So, Mr. Speaker, they've not succeeded. So you know what they brand him as? They brand him as bourgeois, that he doesn't understand the little people and what they go through. But let me tell you something. When God wanted a leader to lead the children of Israel out of captivity, you know who he brought in? He brought the man who was raised in the palace of Pharaoh as a prince, in the person of Moses, who had passed as the son of Pharaoh's daughter.
The minister, who is known for issuing challenges hinted at racial overtones in the opposition's critic of the Prime Minister, again cited biblical scripture to underscore his point.
The Labour Party has condoned by their supporters coming out in large numbers in an anti-Chastanet march because he is a white man. No. Yes. And I challenge them. I challenge the members opposite. Yes. Because you know what? It is Barbados that is influencing them. But now let me tell you something, Mr. Speaker. You know what? You know why Pilate did not let Jesus go? Even though he said, I find no fault with him. He was afraid that his political position would be taken away from him. So you know what he did? He washed his hands. And he said, I find no fault in the man. You know what they said? The people who were moved to say, crucify him, they said, let his blood be on our shoulders and on our children. You see this thing that we are allowing to develop in St. Lucia? We may not be here to suffer the consequences if it is not outrightly condemned by every right-thinking St. Lucia.
Throughout his presentation, the feisty politician known for his heated parliamentary exchanges sought to compare and contrast the performance in government of the UWP and the SLP. He also focused his attention on heaping scorn on members opposite for their previous tenure in office. Colby DeVoe, HDS News Force.
In sports, golf is one of the first sports set to return to the local schedule, with events set to start this coming weekend and at least another 10 before the end of the year, including the National Amateur Championships set for the White Witch course at the Half Moon Hotel in July. President of the Jamaica Golf Association, Peter Chin, says they have adopted protocols from a number of golf associations, including the U.S. Golf Association, tweak them to local conditions which have been accepted by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. For example, golf carts normally carry 2 players, but now it's just 1 player per cart. Normally, it's 1 caddy per player. Now it's restricted to 1 or 2 to a group. In other sporting news, a sports lawyer, Dr. Emir Crowne, is advocating for the creation of a regional sports court to settle disputes involving Caribbean athletes, as he feels that costs associated with taking cases to the Court of Arbitration for Sport is not possible for most athletes from the region. Crowne does not believe that the CAS, which is based in Switzerland, is capable of addressing regional sporting issues such as doping because of the high cost involved for athletes' cases to be heard. Pointing to the cost of the proceedings, he said that he believes this should be so. And that's the news on PBCJ. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. Pleasant viewing.